Hey everybody, how's it going? Welcome back to Diesel Creek. My name's Matt. This big old yellow thing behind me is the free Diesel Compactor that I picked up quite a while ago and we've been working on over the last few months. Now, as you guys have seen in the past few videos, it's turning out to be anything but free. Free is never actually free. This thing has cost me financially and mentally at this point. I think it's really just been weighing me down. So anyway, I think this is going to be it. This is going to be the video where this thing is finally put back into service. So you guys stick around and see if we can make this happen. Now, if you haven't seen this particular yellow heap of iron before, there are several videos on it, and I'll leave the links to those down in the description. I had to cut the last video in half because it just got so long that I can't edit it, my computer can't handle it, and my internet connection can't handle it. So anyways, if you haven't seen the previous videos on this thing, down in the doodly-doo, check them out. Well, I pulled the old roller in here because I thought it was going to rain. It was supposed to, but now it looks like it's going to be beautiful. These weather guys. Anyway, I need to pull the fuel tank out of here yet. The last time I tried to pull it out, it was frozen solid. There's a bunch of dirt packed in around here, so a little warmer today, so we should be able to get this thing out of here and try to clean out the tank and see if it's even viable anymore. Being as how it's packed in with all this dirt down there, good chance it could be rusted pretty bad and not even really savable. Oh, sucker's still in there, isn't it? Might need a bar for this. There we go. Oh man, that fuel tank's a lot bigger than I thought. It's buried under 4 inches of crap. Oh, tank's a bit deeper than I thought it was. It was buried under so much crap I couldn't see it. And actually, that's too early to tell. Might be okay. Yeah, there's a bit of a buildup there, if you will. Boy, have I got a treat for you guys. There's some liquid formerly known as fuel in this tank still. I'm gonna dump it out and see what it looks like here. Oh yeah. Oh, it smells like turpentine. That's not a good sign. I don't think the old Dutes would like that too well. Look at that. Oh, it's nice. Surprisingly, there's not even that much water in it. You can see these little bubbles here that are on the bottom. The little blobs that kind of separate themselves from the other liquid there. That's water. I figured there would have been a lot more than that. Well, I'm going to attempt to show you guys the inside of this tank here. You're able to see a little bit of it. I don't know how well you can tell, but there's quite a bit of gunk in there. It looks like it's pretty thick on the bottom. So I think we're going to have to give this thing the old redneck tumble. Whoops. wonders await us. Ugh. Gonna slosh it around one more time like that, and we'll see what we get. The fuel has caught pretty well up to the price of fuel filters, so I'm not gonna go too crazy on it. Yeah, just a little bit of dirt buildup in here, huh? I should have just got a shovel. Well, we got the whole area around the fuel tank cleaned out there. Wait till you guys see how much crap was in there, because I can't even believe it, and I just did it. Look at that. That's a lot of dirt. Well, I guess we're ready to reinstall this fuel tank. I'm gonna cut a mud flap and lay it down in there. They had a sheet of plywood. I like the mud flap idea a lot better. I'm not sure how well you guys will be able to see, but the tank actually came pretty clean too, so I'm happy with that. Alrighty, we're ready to start putting this drive line back together. This is the shaft that we turned down there in the lathe. It should be ready to go. This is the back side of that centrifugal clutch that I bent up whenever I was taking it apart. And I just happened to stop by my buddy's work the other day, and I told him, and he just grabbed it, threw it in the press and straightened it out, and then before I could even get a camera out, he was done. So I got that, and then I just went ahead and threw it in the lathe and just faced it off, just barely. I mean, it just barely cleaned it up. So we took off a little bit of a material just to true it up. I don't think it's very critical. All it really does is hold the weights in place. There's no pressure goes against this. So yeah, we'll drive a nice new bearing in here and put this thing together. Well, we got some bad news here. So this is the centrifugal clutch. You know, I took it apart here. I was going to blow all this dust out of it, and before you guys all blow up the comments, I'm aware it potentially has asbestos in it. I was definitely gonna put a mask on to blow that out, but I found a problem here. There's another bearing in here, which I didn't realize there was. I thought there was just one in the clutch. B, see how that just kind of falls right in there? And it's pretty well hammered out. So that's a problem. I'm gonna have to order another bearing because I don't have it. And I'm gonna have to weld up this bore and turn it back down on the lathe. So back in the episode where we removed this bearing from the housing here, we could see that the bearing was loose in the housing. It was not a tight fit anymore, and I told you I had a trick to tighten that thing up. Now, of course, this isn't the quote-unquote proper way to do this, but it is a cheap and easy field fix way to get you back in action without having to tear something completely apart and send it to a machine shop and spend a bunch of money. So all those center punch marks that we put throughout the bore, I did those all the way around here, and that basically just makes a divot in the metal, which forces some of it to come back up, and that'll tighten up our bore all the way around there. In conjunction with those, we're going to put some red Loctite in here on this housing. Smear that all around in here. I'll put some on the outside of the bearing too before I drive it in. One side is shielded and one side is open, and that is because the inside gets pumped full of grease here, so we got to make sure we put the shielded side toward the outside. There we go. That's up against the backstop there. Now, I don't think this bearing's going to go anywhere, but the last trick you can do to make sure that they don't is take a center punch and start it just a little bit back from the edge here. Give it a good whack. And see how that kind of rolls the edge over and locks that bearing in there? I'll just do 2 on this one because, like I said, I don't think it's going to go anywhere. Yeah, that basically just clamps onto that outer race there and should keep it from going anywhere. Well, I really need to buy a welding positioner to do this kind of stuff, but I don't have one, so I'm going to attempt to rotate this by hand as I weld the bore up so that we can cut it back down on the lathe and tighten that thing up. But it should stay grounded. It spins fairly easy. I just gotta watch that it doesn't fall off front to back here. But yeah, I don't know. Let's give it a go. All right, we got our clutch up in the lathe here. We go ahead and face the outside off first of all to establish a smooth area, and then we might be able to reach in from the outside here and cut that bore. But worst case scenario, we flip it around and yeah, figure something out. Now we're just dust cutting this part right here. This is basically establishing our zero, but all we're trying to do is clean up this face and true it up where we welded it, so it shouldn't really take much material other than what we welded. Doesn't even look like we're getting all the way through the paint layer. There we go, we're getting into some meat now. All right, to cut this bore on the inside here, the proper tool would be to use a boring bar, which looks like so. Now, I ordered this tool for this job but I screwed up when I ordered it, and it's too big for the lathe. It fits in the tool holder, but the center is too low, and there's no room to shim it up to get it up to the right center, so it's not going to work with this lathe. I screwed up here. I don't know if I just got in a hurry, wasn't thinking about it, whatever the case, I messed up. This thing, I welded up that bore, you know, gonna machine it right back out. I don't remember if I got any footage of me trying to cut this thing or not. This process has been going on for several days now. Basically, this thing is not mild steel. This is cast steel, or I don't think it's cast iron because it wouldn't have been able to be welded so easily. But anyway, the properties of metal, I'm not going to get into all that. I don't know that much about it. But basically what happened is I welded up this bore, and because this isn't mild steel, I welded it with a 7018 rod, and now this thing is just like glass. I mean, this thing is so hard. I tried to machine it with my lathe. I thought it was just that I didn't have the quite proper tooling to do it, and I couldn't make it happen. So I took it to the machine shop that did the shaft for me and said, hey, can you just punch this bore back out for me? Oh yeah, no problem. He called me and said, that thing is so hard we can't even think about touching it. He must have had a 2-inch boring bar trying to cut this thing, and it wasn't even thinking about it. So, yeah, I kind of really screwed up there. But he had a good idea, and I think it should work. Basically, I'm just going to cut this whole bore out of here and put this guy in there as a sleeve and then bore this out because this is mild steel. So, first thing we're going to do is chuck this thing up in the lathe, turn it down, get the outside nice and true, get all the mill slag and crap off of it, get it down to a good reliable OD, and then hopefully we can punch this thing out to accept this. Still going to be hard to cut this, but if you go outside the welded area, it seems to cut easier. So hopefully we can cut it to accept this thing and then weld this in, and then we'll bore out this thing to accept the bearing. That's the plan. Let's get to it. Finally! Woo! Man alive, was that a pain in the butt. Now admittedly, I did not have the proper tooling to make that happen, but I did make it happen nonetheless. Kind of made my own gouge tool here. Beautiful. Alrighty, I got our bucket press jig all together here, and down in the cooler over yonder we have our fancy insert sleeve here that we're going to stick in this, hopefully. Now it would be great if this thing all just falls together now. Since I've heated this part and cooled this part, this will shrink this thing. But I have about a, beautiful. That's about a 5/1000 interference fit, so good, I was able to get 5/1000 out of that thing. We didn't have to press anything, but I had all the stuff here. I was going to push that sucker down in there if it didn't want to just drop in for us. But luckily, the laws of expansion and contraction are on our side today. So we'll let this thing cool down nicely. Actually, I got to heat the whole thing up because we're losing a lot of energy into this piece. So I'm going to heat the whole thing up now, and that way it all cools down evenly. Cast iron can crack if you're not careful. All right, well, it's been about an hour, and this thing has cooled down enough to where I can handle it. Got nice. It's just barely sticking up on the backside here, but that's okay. We can come in here and skim that off and face it. Not a big deal. On the outside, of course, we have quite a bit of excess, and I'm currently mentally debating about how I want to secure this thing. I'm going to take the lathe and, of course, face it off to be even with this finish here, but I was thinking about welding it at first and just putting a nice groove all the way around, like split the seam basically and dig the tool in, create me a nice little groove and weld it all the way around. But I'm kind of mentally, like I said, mentally debating on that. The other thing I could do is these two holes here are puller holes, so you can remove the clutch from the shaft. You can do something similar. I forget what it's called. It's kind of like pinning, but you use set screws instead. So basically the same thing, except instead of drilling holes here, we drill them right on the seam between these two parts, and then tap it and thread it and run set screws down into the threads, 180 apart, or you could put 3 of them in a triangle, however you wanted to do it, and that would lock this thing's already so tight that it shouldn't ever move, but putting those set screws in there would really lock it down and keep it from moving. I'm kind of leaning towards that route right now because I kind of don't want to weld this and make any really hard spots or risk cracking this cast iron piece now after we've done all this work. Anyways, I'm going to chuck this back up in the lathe and we'll face this thing off. All right, we're starting out with a centering drill here. Just got to get it lined up on my mark. Make sure we share half of our hole with each material. I think we're pretty good there. Click the magnet on to lock it on. And I actually don't know if this thing's going to work right now. I got this whole thing running off a little battery generator. Lights in the container right now, and this mag drill about to run off this little battery bank that they sent me. So we're going to see if this thing even works. Contact. Nice. All right, well, I switched out to our tap drill bit here, and I have put a piece of tape on the depth that I want to take this to, and I'm probably going to drill just shy of that depth actually, because it's really close to poking through the other side of this thing, and I don't want to do that, so we're going to try to hold it back a little. Well, I hope that didn't just screw us up. The drill bit's deflecting over into the easier to drill cast iron metal rather than the steel. Our countersink here's a bit off. Would have helped if I had the correct bit to do this. I don't have a correct countersinking bit. All I have is this is a 5/8 bit. So, yeah. Gotta run what you brung. There we go. It's got to blow that out with a compressor, and we have one hole. Don't be bashful with a Loctite on something like this. I don't think that they'll ever come out of there anyway, but you know, little dab, little extra never hurt anybody. And there we go, finished product. Nice and countersunk, ready for action. Then we have to punch out this bore yet to accept the bearing. Finally, one last super overkill way to do this to ensure that we're not going to have any movement out of this. I'm going to center punch the bolt to the steel here. All right, finally got this bore done here, so we can go ahead and reassemble this clutch. About time. Going to use this bolt to pull the shaft into the bearing. Perfect. Really? Oh my gosh. Everything that could possibly go wrong with this assembly, this whole project through and through, has been nothing but a struggle. And this thing better shake the damn ground like the gates of hell are opening up, because this project has just been irritating me, and to be honest, my heart isn't in it anymore. So, stupid little setbacks like this. Like, okay, well this cover popped off because the way I was driving the bearing on. And I did heat that bearing a little bit to try to get it to drop on here easier, but I didn't want to heat it too much because it's sealed bearing. It's not a regular old bearing, so I don't want to cook the seals out of it. I probably already did. Anyhow, and now to get this cover back on here, you know, really, you just can't. There's no good way to do it in this position. You would really need to pull that whole bearing back off of there and stick it back on, because you're going to damage the bearing by using the bolts to draw it down on there. But you know what, at this point I don't care. To get it apart would be just as hard. So at the expense of the bearing, unfortunately, I think we're going to just run the bolts in. For the record, I don't like what I'm doing here. I'm just out of options and out of patience more than anything. The stinking washer just split apart. Like, why? Why? Alrighty, I am excited. This looks like we have everything back together now, and we can go ahead and fire this thing up again for the first time in a long time and see if we can actually make this thing shake. Oh, after all the headaches and aggravation, and I don't think the video is really going to show what all is going on behind the scenes and how long this process has taken, but it just feels like it took way longer than it should, and I'm going to be really excited if this thing actually works. So without further ado, let's go ahead and fire this thing up. Contact. Wow, okay, so, I don't know how well you guys could tell from that, but I hadn't even let the engine warm up yet, and the clutch was already engaged over here, shaking the heck out of the drum, and yeah, my temporary fuel tank started shaking up and down, the battery started shaking up and down, so we don't need to be breaking a hole in our battery or anything like that, so better batten down the hatches a little bit better here. Also, I don't remember if I cleared this up earlier in the video, but everybody got on me in the last video for not greasing all the bearings super good before I put it back together. And that's because it was much easier to grease them once we're together when I just had a grease fitting and I didn't have to sit there and hand pack all those bearings. The way this thing's set up, I could just pressure feed all the grease in through a tube there. And you can see there's actually a little pile of grease that fell out because I put so much in there. So everything should be super well lubricated. All right, let's go ahead and try this again. And contact. It's working very nicely. It seems like this thing hits pretty good. I am excited about that. This thing has been a ton of work, but hopefully it's going to pay off here. We're going to have to wait until we get it out on the dirt and really see how it hits. All right. It has been a long, hard road for this machine, but I think it's finally ready to take it for its maiden voyage. Ooh, boy. Contact. not a bad little test run. Now, we're still running on old oil from when we got this thing first fired up, which I know some of you are going to be cringing at, but nothing happened. It's been fine. So we got the engine good and warm now. We're going to go ahead and drain this oil. I think we ran it for probably 10 or 15 minutes. It really wasn't that long. So we'll go ahead and drain the oil out, change all that stuff, and then should be able to do away with a temporary fuel tank. I have the actual fuel tank cleaned up and installed, as you guys saw. So we should be able to get this all back to squared away. Plug's nice and clean. That's a good sign. Let's play a game called How Much of a Mess Is This Gonna Make? Surprisingly, none. That's a good thing. It's a Wix 51271. A little bit of sludge at the bottom of the housing, but not bad. I don't know if you guys can see it. Oh, there we go, completely serviced. I guess the fuel filter wasn't stuffed up. There's no gunky looking fuel in it. Looks clean down inside. Alright, so I needed to put a new sediment bowl on the lift pump here, which I did, and then I started trying to prime it, and that's when there was no pumping going on from the fuel pump. So I started taking it apart here. I don't know if you guys can tell, it is just packed full of gunk. So I got a rebuild kit. We're going to take this thing off of here and go through it, and hopefully we'll be back in business. Holy crap. Yeah, no wonder it won't pick up any fuel. Look at that thing. That banjo bolt is completely plugged up. Holy cow. Well, I just replaced that oil not that long ago, and it certainly looks like it's gotten a pile of water in it again. But now that I'm thinking about it, at the time when I drained this whole thing out, this injection pump, the stuff that I was able to get out was in the governor, and it was frozen up into a block. It's quite possible there was another big frozen chunk of ice back inside of the pump there. So, yeah. That thing's plugged up solid. So are these two ports on top. I'm not sure if you can make it out or not, but it's bad. Oh yeah. Look how gunky this stuff is. Holy crap. Alright, well, seems to be a running theme with this project, but I tried to rebuild this one. I have a kit here to rebuild it, and the main plunger that runs through the body here was seized up, so I'm trying to tap it back and forth and get it freed up again after I cleaned all the dirt from around it, and ended up completely ruining it. So tapping that plunger there, you see that one. I'm trying to tap that because it should be spring-loaded and move back and forth, and ended up just breaking the pin straight through the housing back here. So, yippee. This one's not junk, I just need that part in there, which I don't have, so might reach out to Area Diesel Service and see if they have those things, but brutal over there in the sun. But anyway, so a while back, maybe in the first or second video of this compactor, we addressed the glow plug situation here, and I determined that I thought they were burnt up. They looked like they were pretty rough, so I pulled the numbers off of them and searched around online, and I really couldn't come up with any results. So of course I reached out to Area Diesel Service, big shout out to them, and they were able to get me 3 glow plugs sent over post haste. Anyways, they were able to get their hands on the set and sent them right over, and yeah, I'll go ahead and throw these guys in here and have some working glow plugs, although it's hot enough now, we don't need them. Don't know if any of you will recall, but the way we wired the glow plugs up in the first video or the second video, whichever it was, I was questioning whether that was correct to give the glow plugs 12 volts. It looked to me like the glow plugs had individual ratings on them of less than that, and after speaking with Area Diesel Service, they said I was doing it correctly and that the glow plugs should be fine with that. That was good news. Well guys, I know we've talked about it before on the channel when I've done previous videos on compactors, but it's really hard to convey compaction in a video form. When you're standing here, it's easy to feel the ground shake, and it's really easy to tell with your eyes how much it's compacting something, but it's pretty difficult to show that on camera. So hopefully I've done the best of my abilities to show it to you on camera, but hopefully you're able to see with your own eyes through the video that this old girl's hitting pretty good. So I'm pretty happy with it, and it's really doing a good job of knocking down this this fill that I've put in over here. In the last video I did on building my dream shop, as I've been calling it, I showed that I was filling out the edge over here and going to carry the pad over to the edge of the slope, which I have since completed, and I was rolling it in as I went with the smaller red compactor that I have, but and the red compactor does a pretty decent job, but this thing hits better. So I'm happy with that. I'm happy that it's working now with all the money I've put into it. It better be. With all the money and time that I've put into this thing now, I'm very glad to see it back in operation. So if you would, guys, and if you haven't already, so there's still a few other minor details that we need to finish up on this compactor, but pretty much I can use it as it is, and I'm just going to tinker around here and there and finish fixing it up over time. I probably won't ever get rid of this thing unless it has another catastrophic failure. I'm going to keep it around here, and it's going to be at least a farm roller, and if I need to, I could take it out on a job. But anyways, I'm happy with it, and I guess that about wraps up this video. So if you guys like the video, do me a big favor, hit that thumbs up button down below. It really helps out the channel. Doesn't cost you guys a thing. Don't forget, if you want to help support the channel and get some sweet merchandise in the process, you can go over to dieselcreek.com and get yourself some sweet Diesel Creek swag and help the channel at the same time. And of course, if you're not already, be sure you're hitting that subscribe button and clicking the bell icon so you can be notified of all the future videos. I've got a lot of cool stuff coming up here, and after we get the shop put up where I'm standing, we're going to be able to put out a lot more good quality content, I hope. So anyways, that's all I got for now. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.